They are like the most menacing clowns.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
clowns.
the end of my...
Well, yeah, because we have a president who is a...
narcissistic lunatic, sociopath, psychopath?
I was going to stick with menacing clown, but all those are true. Menacing clown.
Sure.
He is a menacing clown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to George Conway Explains It All to Sarah. I'm Sarah Longwell, publisher of the Bulwark, and because I'm not a lawyer, I've asked my good friend George Conway from the Society for the Rule of Law to explain the illegal news to me. And there is a lot to get through today. But I want to start with the most annoying thing always happens, which is we have like one of these great conversations. We had some breaking news last week, whatever, but then like Friday rolls around, and of course there's another big thing. We're just going to have to start recording like breaking news.
Yeah,
ones.
no, I think it's like we'll have a messenger come in and say, outrage, here's an outrage, and we'll pull out an outrage card, and we'll say, we'll take a break for the current outrage that just occurred.
Yeah. So on Friday, there was an emergency application filed in the Supreme Court on behalf of Venezuelan men who were in immigration custody and at risk of imminent deportation under Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act. And very early on Saturday morning, so shortly after midnight, we would not have taped a pod at this time, the Supreme Court issued an order directing the government not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. And that was a 7-2 decision with only Thomas and Alito dissenting. So what do you think? Is this an encouraging sign?
Yes, I think it's an encouraging sign. We'll see how it plays out in the future, but I think there's a lot to be said for the conclusion that the Supreme Court's kind of had it with the Trump administration here. And what happened was, if you remember from the earlier litigation, the one involving Abrego Garcia, the court basically said that under the Alien Enemies Act, whatever you do, you have to give people notice so they can file a habeas petition. Mm-hmm. You have to give them adequate time, adequate notice. And the whole thing about the original Venezuelan deportation or extradition, or rendition, or a friend of mine calls it Pinochet-ing, which I think I like it as a term after Augusto Pinochet, the dictator of Chile, used to disappear people. They try to do this stuff in the middle of the night so they can avoid judicial review. And the ACLU has to basically, all these poor people at the ACLU have to stay up and monitor what's going on and keep tabs on where they think their clients are in order to make sure that they don't get sent out of the country while nobody, including a judge, is looking. And that's what they tried to do last Friday night, the government. And they had these people apparently at one point on buses. And the ACLU, representing this putative class, not yet certified, but a putative class of individuals. Can you just tell me,
what is putative class?
Putative means it's when you file, let's say I file on behalf of all podcast hosts, a class action. And you're the named plaintiff. You're the one who actually appears on the caption. You don't name all the people who are part of the class.
Right.
And that's the putative class, all podcast hosts.
So this is all the Venezuelans.
Right, but they haven't been certified yet. You have to. There's a process for certifying the class, but the court can issue orders to protect the interests of the class even before it's certified, because it gets to protect its own jurisdiction, so that it doesn't prevent, so the case doesn't get mooted before they actually proceed to the class action proceedings. And anyway, so what happened here in this Texas situation was they went to the district judge and they said, please issue an order saying they can't do what we think they're about to do. And the judge says, well, I haven't certified the class, but I can say they can't remove the two people who are on the caption. And that wasn't really good enough for the ACLU. They basically went straight up to the Fifth Circuit and asked the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit for relief. And then they realized we may not get relief in time from the Fifth Circuit, so they went up to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Can you do that?
Yes, you can. For purposes of emergency relief, you can take it up as high as you can. Although normally the higher courts wait for the lower courts. But if it's like somebody's about to be put to death, or somebody's about to hear it was sent out of the country, the courts can leapfrog each other, and that's what the Supreme Court did at 1 a.m. And what the court said at 1 a.m. is they issued an order basically saying stop. and asked the Solicitor General, who represents the United States of America in litigation, to submit a brief. But in the meantime, stop trying to remove these people. And so they did. The buses ended up turning around. And what was outrageous about this case, I mean, first of all, the whole thing's outrageous, right? The attempt to basically take people and send them out of the country without due process in all of these cases is completely outrageous. But what
are these supposed to be gang members too?
They're supposed to be, I think, Venezuelan gang members. I think they were TDA. They were supposed to be TDA.
Trendeagua.
Yeah. And I could have that wrong. I mean, it's just like I get all the we don't. The point of it is these people were on buses.
Yeah.
And so the Solicitor General, day or two later, files his response and basically gaslights the court, and in such a outrageous way. Basically says, oh, this was premature. You're not supposed to grant relief if it's premature. And the district court only had a few minutes to act, and the Court of Appeals yet hadn't acted. And so it was all premature. And then Alito wrote a dissent saying, oh, it was all premature. It's like, this is insane. These people were actually on buses. It wasn't premature. It was imminent that these people were about to be sent to El Salvador. They had no choice but to go to the Supreme Court of the United States was the only court that provided relief or could provide relief under that circumstances. But they go and they have the nerve, and then Alito has the nerve to parrot that, oh, it was premature. It's like the guy, it's like it would be like somebody strapped to a gurney. To get a lethal injection in a death penalty case, and the state coming in and arguing, well, it's really premature to seek relief from the Supreme Court.
Right.
Like when they're the needle's about to hit the guy's skin. It's insane and outrageous. And that Justice Alito could even give credence to this just says a lot about Justice Alito these days.
But because now we've had 190 judgment from the Supreme Court saying you gotta facilitate this guy coming back.
Well, look, let's be technically correct here. That people are calling that 9-0, but we don't know for a fact that it's 9-0 because in this kind of situation where the court issues an order for the court, you don't actually get to see the voting lineup. What happens is I may, if I'm a justice and I disagree, I may either note that I disagree or not. So it's possible that it was 5-4. But it's hard to imagine that Alito and Thomas, if they had a real issue, which they seem to have issues with a lot of things, wouldn't have said at least saying Justice Alito would deny the application or dissents from the court's order. Mm-hmm. And then in the case, which is what happened essentially in the 1 a.m. Saturday morning case, which ended up being called AARP, which are the initials of the lead plaintiff, who has a Spanish name, so lots of AARP.
So it's not because he's over 55.
No. And the AARP, the retirement organization, went into the district court and said, please change the caption because everybody thinks we did this. But anyway, it's just what they were trying to do was they are trying to avoid the courts. They're trying to evade the courts by playing games with them. And it's just outrageous. And then we're going to talk about a couple more examples of what they're doing here.
Yeah, look, I'm going to sneak in an ad here real quick, and then I'm going to jump actually just to the other instance where they did this, because it is clear now they are trying to play games, and I want to figure out if this is going to stand. Okay, but let's talk laundry real quick. I know it's not the most exciting chore, but what if I told you Laundry Day is now my favorite day of the week? Maybe
Every
yours
day.
Too. Well, man, I got kids. All we got to do is laundry constantly.
Yesterday.
And it's all thanks to Italian bergamot laundry detergent pods from Laundry Sauce. These powerful pods tackle stains while leaving your clothes with a long-lasting cologne-quality scent. If you're always on the grind, working hard, staying sharp, and looking sharp, this scent is made for you. It kicks off with sweet Italian bergamot, mandarin, and black currant leaves for a fresh, energizing vibe. Then ginger and pink peppercorn, bringing a crisp, modern edge that keeps you feeling on top of your game. My goodness. You know who would
Laundry
like
paradise.
this? Tom Nichols. Tom Nichols loves to smell like things. Do you know that about him?
I just know he doesn't like people taking their shoes off on airplanes.
Yeah, that's true. He's a stickler for that one.
Which I think is consistent with the having nice
That's
odors
true,
instead of bad
actually.
odors.
Yeah, but he's like constantly talking about.
He also
like,
does not like curry.
No, that's right. He got in trouble for that one though.
Yeah.
But he does like this next one. This says as it settles, sandalwood. So that's one of the things adds warmth and depth, while cypress keeps it clean and refined. And the finish, musk, amber woods, and Indonesian patchouli.
Not Elon.
Indonesian patchouli give it a rich, sophisticated feel with just enough edge to stand out.
All right, I'm going to vouch here.
All right,
Can I
hold
vouch?
on. One second. If you're all about success, style, and quality, Italian bergamot is your go-to scent. It is fresh, sharp, and built to match your ambition.
Was that already pre-written about the bergamot?
Yeah.
Wow.
I had to do a check on how you pronounced bergamot to make sure there wasn't a Frenchy way
Because that's
to
what
say it.
I literally tried laundry sauce out yesterday
Yeah.
using the Italian bergamot. I also have Siberian pine and then some other odor. But it's like you take they come in these pretty.
Come here. Oh, you smell delightful.
This is gonna the MAGA people are gonna go batshit when they see that.
Why? It's fine. It's your shirt. It's great.
Sniffing my shirt.
I mean, that's the whole thing about this.
Yeah. Yes, I use the Italian bergamot. I also have Siberian pine. And what's great about it is it comes in these very fancy boxes about this big. And if you just need a hit, you just open the box and go.
Are men more likely to do laundry if it has this like more froofy, actually the opposite. Are men more likely to do laundry if they have these more masculine pods?
Are they really masculine? I thought that they just smell good.
I don't know. Whenever
these
Tom
masculine?
Nichols kind of does this thing, he's always talking about caramel and tobacco and sandalwood as these it's how he describes manliness.
Men's flavors.
This is why I make fun of him online.
Odors. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I just liked I liked it. They were kind of cool, and they smell better than Tide Pods.
Yeah, sure.
Don't eat them, please.
Teenagers, if you're listening.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't light them on fire. No, but I was like, I think I'm going to stick with them.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, for a limited time only, our listeners get 20% off your entire order when you use code AskGeorge at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with promo code AskGeorge. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Guys, you got to support our show. It's the best way to support our show is to tell them we sent you. And so that's so one more time. Our listeners get 20% off your entire order when you use code AskGeorge, and you got to go to laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with promo code AskGeorge. It's time to make Laundry Day the best day of the week. All right. So
I feel refreshed.
So let's skip ahead. I'm gonna go back to some other things, but just because it is related, in terms of the way that the administration is trying to play a weird shell game with the Supreme Court. So in another deportation case, and voters are gonna have such a hard time understanding the difference between all these deportation cases.
I can't keep track of all the cases myself. I have to write them down.
Well, in this case, the administration said that it had removed individuals to El Salvador after a district court said not to. So the district court order said not to, and they did it anyway. And the government's excuse was that the removal to El Salvador was carried out by the Department of Defense rather than Homeland Security, which was the named defendant in the case.
This is just so incredibly outrageous, even for all of the outrageous things that the Trump administration has been doing lately. This is a case that's called DVD. They all have initials, right? Because the real names aren't there. And I literally just read about this within the last hour because Ryan Goodman, a professor of law at NYU, who runs this website called Just Security, which has basically a whole page devoted to the 200 plus cases that have been brought against the Trump administration for this, that, and everything under the sun. And it turned out this case hasn't been getting a lot of attention because there's so many other cases. There's the Abrego-Garcia case. There's the AARP case that we just talked about. But this one, the court issued an order March 28th, and it says that the government, the defendants, are restrained from removing DVD and these other two people from the United States to a third country, unless and until they get written notice, et cetera, due process, in other words. The defendants in the case included Department of Homeland Security, did not include the Department of Defense. And so what the Department of Homeland Security did was it sent the prisoners, I think, to Guantanamo, turned them over to DOD, and then DOD sent them to El Salvador. And they said, the government filed a brief basically saying, the TDA Grand Member was removed to El Salvador on March 31, 3 days after the court order, by the Department of Defense on a flight where no DHS personnel were on board. DHS did not direct the Department of Defense to remove DVD or whoever it was. The Department of Defense is not a defendant in this action. Okay, that's outrageous. Because we have one federal government, and one of the things is, in every injunctive relief order, I mean, it should be pretty obvious, but every injunctive relief order, including this one, this temporary restraining order, it says defendants and all of their officers, agents, servants, employees, attorneys, successors, assigns, and persons acting in concert or participation with them, which would basically include the Department of Defense if you are turning people over to them. This is an outrageous violation.
And just to be super clear, because I had to understand this for a layperson, it is that DHS, our Department of Homeland Security, had the individuals, right? They were the ones had custody of these individuals.
At the time this order was issued.
At the time the order that happened.
Correct.
So after the court order, they transferred them
and
to DOD
oops.
And then said, well, you didn't specify DOD, so we're doing it anyway.
I mean, look, if we were in like a family court, for example, let's pick something, and let's say you and I were getting a divorce.
Oh, bummer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was. I mean,
it's great while it lasted.
Because, she smelled and she didn't like what she smelled.
That's right.
So, what? And then the court ordered me to do something, not to do something, right? Don't take Sarah's
all my
jewels.
Oh, my jewels.
And sell them. Because I put them online. So instead, what I do is I give them to Barry, our producer.
Yeah.
And say, Barry, sell these. Okay? I'm violating the court order.
Yes.
Yes.
And I needed those jewels.
And you needed those jewels. Yeah. Yes, because you're just adorned with them like we are.
I'm a big jewel person.
No, but that's the point. It's like you cannot, you can't play these games with courts. And what's going on here is that the federal court, the federal judges, are the last people you want to fuck around with in violating their orders. Absolutely, they get very mad very easily when you do that. No litigant in their right mind would do this except for the Trump administration, which is not in its right mind because it's run by a bunch of people who are not in their right mind. But what they are doing here is it is just purely contemptuous of the courts. And they're doing it. This is the same pattern of, in this case, turning the prisoners over to DOD. In the AARP case we just talked about, presenting, it's premature when they've got these people on buses to the airport. And then we've got Abrego-Garcia, right? Abrego-Garcia, they were back in the district court. And that's the opinion. That's the case that went up to the Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, where I was singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic last week, and and people were getting mad at me because I was interrupting.
It's like two comments online. You can't take it. You can't take it Tuesday.
Okay, sorry. So anyway, in that case, the government's asking some pretty simple questions. I mean, the government is being asked by the district judge some pretty simple questions because she wants to enforce her order. The Supreme Court basically said 7-2, probably. We don't know, but 7-2. Well, only 2 people dissented. No, this was 9-0 actually. This is the 9-0 one. All my cases confused. That the government has to facilitate the return of these individuals to the United States and facilitate due process. She's seeking discovery. Okay, who's doing this? Where are these people? What's going on with them? Who has control? And
wait, is this in the Abrego Garcia case?
Abrego Garcia case before Judge Zenas in Theyre. And she really got mad at them yesterday because they still haven't, it's been 2 weeks and they have not yet answered word 1. And that's another way you jerk around federal judges, is you send somebody to court who doesn't know the answers or you do not tell the answers to. And if you were a private litigant and you did this, if I were the general counsel of a corporation and I sent Sarah into a federal district court and intentionally sent her in without the knowledge she needs to answer what the judge's obvious questions are going to be, they'd haul my ass in. And that's, she's getting to that point. I mean, she can't haul Donald Trump in, I guess, but she's losing her patience, and rightly so. And this is what they are doing basically in every case.
Could she haul Pam Bondi in?
She could, yes. She could order the Pam Bondi be brought in. And then you'd have more of this is the escalating constitutional crisis that we're talking about here. It's like, it's ramping up. I'll give you another example. This isn't in one of the immigration cases, but another situation. Yesterday, there were 2 almost back-to-back. There were 2 back-to-back hearings before different district judges here in the United States, here in the District of Columbia, the United States District Court here, in the law firm cases. The first case was before Judge Howell, which we've talked about this case. This is the Perkins-Coie case, the first of the law firm the cases brought by law firms against the executive orders directed at their firms. And then there was another one before another judge who was actually I think Reagan appointee, Judge Leon, who has a case involving Wilmer Hale, which is a very, very, very prominent law firm, both here and nationwide. In that first hearing, which was basically for a permanent injunction, Judge Howell kept asking, but spent like 2 hours apparently, asking just simple, basic questions of the government lawyer, including, are these agreements that these other law firms have reached with the Trump administration, are they written? Are they written down? Are these written agreements? Which is sort of an interesting question. Everybody's been wondering because in the Paul Weiss situation, Paul Weiss seemed to have a different interpretation or different language that it was trotting out to its lawyers than the government, than the White House put on its website. The government lawyer could not even answer that basic question, whether the government had settled these things with whether the Trump administration had settled these other cases with these other law firms involving the same issues with written documents. Because it would make sense. You'd want to see what those are, to see what the whole object of this game is. Mm-hmm. And the lawyer couldn't answer the question. And then Judge Howell apparently just looked incredulous at the lawyer. It's like, you can't even answer a basic question like that? And that's what they're doing. They're first of all, they're playing games with the courts. They're lying to the courts, and they're sending lawyers in who don't have information. And remember the one in the first lawyer that went in the Abrego Garcia case. He basically said, I told my clients that, and they didn't give an answer. I asked them, and he gets fired.
He got fired. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is just the disrespect for the federal judiciary that this administration is showing is just, they're not even pretending to be other. In fact, Trump attacked Judge Howell, the judge in the Perkins-Coie case, by saying that she was an unmitigated disaster, something like, I wrote it down, unmitigated something. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he wrote it because unmitigated is kind of a big word for him.
Yeah.
But, they're just attacking judges. They're ignoring them, and they're just playing games with them. I don't know how any lawyer in the Justice Department can go into court representing their client now with any degree of hope that they can faithfully adhere to their professional responsibility.
So here's my question. It is very early still in this administration. We're just coming up on 100 days.
Yeah, no, we're barely over 90. I checked the other day, and it's like, it is amazing how much destruction. Destruction is easier than
Yeah, that's
building.
true. But here's the thing. So you can only play games for so long with the courts, right? At some point,
Right.
you get to that.
Right.
But
Right.
they did in the 7-2 case, the Supreme Court,
Well,
they did turn the buses around, yes?
They turn the buses around. And, but, you know, they're going to keep trying.
Yeah.
We know that they're going to keep trying because they can't help themselves. They're going to keep playing games with the courts. And, you know, sooner or later it's going to come down to something like Judge Zenas in the District of Maryland. Maybe she'll order Pam Bondi to come in and raise her right hand, or Stephen Miller to raise their right hand to basically say, well, you know, so we can find out what the hell's going on here, who's doing what, who's saying what to whom. And then there's this hearing before Judge Boasberg in the original TDA case, the original Venezuelan deportation case that basically got tossed because it had to be done in habeas. But it's clear that the court's orders were violated, and the court's orders were valid until they were reversed. And even, you know, the way you overturn a court order is to go upstairs and get it overturned by a court of appeals, not defying it. And they clearly defied his orders. So he's as we previously discussed, he wants to hold contempt proceedings. This is all of these cases are presenting these issues where sooner or later the courts are going to order somebody like a Stephen Miller or a Pam Bondi or a Tom Homan to testify, and are they going to really produce these people? And at some point, they're just I've been saying this since basically the end of January. At some point, they're just going to say, screw it. They're not going to obey these court orders. They're there now. They're just pretending to go along. And then what they do is then they look at the next way they can try to avoid it.
Aren't they worried about making the court really mad, especially the Supreme Court?
You would think so, but at the end of the day, I think, for example, Trump doesn't care. I don't think Stephen Miller cares. I think these people actually, and it was, who's that guy, Sean Davis?
Yeah.
Sean Davis, who's the head of the Federalist. He basically said we should just tell the courts to go basically F off and not
just ignore the court.
Just ignore the courts. To which I responded on Twitter and on Blue Sky with, I think the best name for his publication would be The Fascist and not The Federalist. But
ignoring the courts is like kind of fascism 101.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. I mean, and they're trying to, intimidate the courts. They've been, they're pulling off that bull BS about they're going to impeach judges they don't like. They're just continually attacking the judges as left-wing lunatics.
Yeah.
Using this extreme language when in fact they're getting hit on all sides by judges from all different kinds of administrations. I mean, the first judge to really rule against them was in the first birthright citizenship case, and it was an old Reagan appointee.
Yep.
Judge Leon, I think, is a Reagan appointee or a first Bush appointee. He's going to hit. I think they're going to lose all these law firm cases, which is great. I mean, there are 4 law firm cases pending in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, and so there was some thinking, well, they probably go all to the same judge because basically it's just one legal issue, the same set of legal issues under the First, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments, and other provisions. But they all went to 4 different district judges: the Perkins-Coie case, the Wilmer Cutler case, the Jenner and Block case, and the Sussman-Godfrey case. Went to 4 different district judges: Howell, Bates, Leon, and Alicon. And the government's going to lose all 4 of them. And these are all people appointed by from different administrations.
Which is why they should have fought in the first place, these law firms.
Okay, now you're going to get me. That's another hour-long monologue where I attack. No, it's so outrageous. It's so outrageous.
Just don't do an hour, but do a few minutes.
I mean, it's. I mean, as I said, I mean, the people at these law firms, and I can name names like Brad Karp at Paul Weiss, should be absolutely ashamed. This is just a, I've developed kind of a email relationship now with both of the Rifkin granddaughters, so it's very exciting for me. A little bit of legal history there, and the notion that they're disgracing this great law firm, Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison. That was the grandfather, Rifkin, Judge Rifkin, and with caving in these cases that they were going to win is just obscene. And it was all for these, the difference between making $15 million a year and $25 million a year for some people. Mm-hmm. That's what it's about.
Okay,
Not about whether they live in a free country, which I think is more valuable than money. At least I think so.
I think what good is having a bunch of money if you live in a fascist country?
Well, the only good is that you would be able to get out of the fascist country using your private jet or something. I don't know.
Okay.
That's not very patriotic.
It is not very patriotic. All right, one more ad read, and then I want to talk about Harvard, your alma mater. So True Classic has one mission: making guys look good and feel even better. They've nailed fit, feel, and price across your entire wardrobe, not just tees, but hoodies, jeans, activewear, everything you need to level up your everyday style. But True Classic isn't just about great clothes. Their brand DNA is built on being highly intentional in everything they do. From creating high-quality essentials to making folks laugh with their hilarious ads to delivering Ritz-Carlton-level customer service. To giving back to the community they believe in, every detail is done with purpose. Now, George has been wearing True Classic for a while now. You look great.
I actually
Perfect
ordered
fit.
not wearing it right now. I should have worn them, but I have a whole bunch. I just bought a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And they're just very, very, not only do they look good, they're just very comfortable.
Yeah. Do they do this thing? I don't really understand men's tailoring, but it's like makes your chest, it's like tight on your chest and loose on your.
No, that's what you have to wear a armor plate underneath.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay.
So you don't look like, I don't know, Elon or something. Or Donald.
Sure.
Okay.
Forget overpriced
All right,
designer.
sorry about the fat shaming. I don't know what that thing is.
Don't worry, we'll cut it out. Forget overpriced designer nonsense. Skip the cheap throwaways. True Classic delivers premium essentials built for real life. Grab yours at Target or Costco or head to trueclassic.com/askgeorge to get hooked up today.
Yeah.
All right. Harvard. Let's talk about Harvard. Okay. Last week, we knew that Harvard wasn't capitulating to the administration's demands, and since then, Harvard has filed a lawsuit against the administration. Good, go on offense. The complaint says, all told, the trade-off put to Harvard and other universities is clear. Allow the government to micromanage your academic institution or jeopardize the institution's ability to pursue medical breakthroughs, scientific discoveries, and innovative solutions. The complaint also says, among many other things, that restrictions on Harvard's programs violate the First Amendment by seeking to restrict what Harvard's faculty may teach students. The classroom with its surrounding environs is peculiarly the marketplace of ideas that the First Amendment is designed to safeguard. Is that word peculiarly?
Peculiarly. Yeah, that's a word. I think that's a word.
Not
peculiar. Peculiar is the adjective, and peculiarly is the adverb version of it.
Okay.
I mean, we can look it up.
Peculiarly the marketplace of ideas that the First Amendment is designed to safeguard.
It could be particularly.
It could be, but that's all. Let me tell you what. It's a hard word to pronounce. So I assume
we have to go to Harvard.
I guess that's the problem. Is I didn't go to Harvard.
Yeah.
Kenyon. I assume this is going to be protracted litigation, but it's encouraging to see an institution as promising and prominent as your alma mater fight back.
And I cannot tell you how proud I am of Harvard for doing this. And I did a thing. Did you know about this thing?
No.
I did a thing on Nicole's show on Friday.
Yeah.
So it turned out there was a news story on Friday morning that I had not seen. And I didn't see it all day because there was so much other outrageous stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I go on Deadline White House at 5:15 to talk about Harvard. I knew that was the topic. And all of a sudden, Nicole starts reading from this New York Times article, which the thrust of which was Harvard is raising all sorts of money from its alumni because they're so proud of what Harvard has done. And she reads this quote from a guy named Gil Pimentel, who's my classmate, class of 84. And then she goes and she talks to, the first person she talks to is this Boston Globe reporter. I'm thinking, this is great. I should give some money. And I've never given money. I'm 41 years out of Harvard College. So I'm 61. Oh, God help me. And I've really never given money to Harvard. Maybe I gave a little when I was like a young lawyer, like $1,500 or something. I don't know, some small amount. I may have never, ever given them any money because they don't need my money. They have lots of money. And I'm like...
That's what Republicans think, too. They don't need the government's money because they have so much money.
Well, but this isn't just this is like the government. Well, here, the Harvard complaint does something that says these idiots at the White House tried to shut down grants given to independent entities that are associated indirectly with Harvard, like all these teaching hospitals in Boston, like Mass General and Brigham. I mean, all these hospitals, they have relationships with through the medical school, and so you may get somebody operating on your eye who's a professor of ophthalmology at Harvard, but they were trying to cut these independent hospitals off because they had something to do with Harvard. But anyway, go back to it. So I'm going on this show, and I'm thinking during this, she does like 2 minutes with someone else. I'm thinking I really should give money because I thought when President Garber first announced that they were going to not comply, I thought, God, I should give them money. Right? I should do something. But then listen to these dramatic readings that Nicole is doing from this article. I was thinking, I definitely have to do it now. And so I did it like on air.
What'd you commit?
$100,000.
Whoa, that's a big grant.
It was, and I did it. Yeah, I sent it off this week.
Did they see it and like reach out to you?
I mean, the development people were like, okay, we'll take money, even from an insane person. We will take money.
Yeah.
So I did do that, and and it was like, if I'd given money consistently over the years, it would have probably amounted to put that in a box. It probably would have been at least that. But I mean, it was. I liked the idea of just being able to participate in this. Yeah, being able to give money to my alma mater, for which I'm very proud, as a FU to who. This made me happy.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, well, just as incentives go, right, it's sort of like...
It gave me such psychic pleasure.
Yeah, it's important, right, to support these institutions that he's attacking so that people, they don't have as much leverage, right?
Yeah.
And that is...
It's absolutely right. And this is the point I made on Nicole's show on Friday, which is, capitulation is infectious, but so is standing up.
Yeah.
And what Harvard did was, I think it did what Paul Weiss didn't do. Paul Weiss, by being this incredibly reputable law firm with a history of public service, caving to Trump, made it inevitable that others would say, well, why, if Paul Weiss isn't going to fight, why should we?
Right.
And if Harvard had caved, the most well-financed, the oldest university and one of the most prestigious, oldest university in the United States and one of the most prestigious in the world, had caved, I mean, why should any other college fight, including these Ivy League schools? And it was a very, very important moment. Now, I mean, the Trump administration kind of blew it because there were probably some things they could have asked for that would have, been ice and winter for Harvard to give. So that's what the law firms kind of thought they were doing. Of course, what happens is he comes back for more.
Well, right, because they said we're going to give you pro bono work that's like roughly on things you're interested in, and they came back and said, like, here's what we're interested in.
We have some cases for you.
And they were like, well, we don't want to do these cases pro bono. Yeah.
Yeah, and Harvard, by standing up, set the example. No, basically, I think everybody wants to fight in the nonprofit world and in the university world and the nonprofit world. And I think that's great. And it's just that's the only way. Everybody has to stick together.
Yeah. And there was then a bunch of colleges and universities that all signed a letter that I can't remember if it was supporting Harvard or simply like agreeing with the premise. All I know is Kenyon signed that letter because somebody sent it to me.
Yay, Kenyon.
Here's my question.
Can I throw one thing in?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Then they did this. Did you see the stupid thing that the administration then did?
Well, is this where they actually said they made a mistake sending the thing to Harvard?
Yes. So they sent this ridiculous letter out to Harvard from HHS.
Yeah, like all these demands.
All these insane demands, which basically is what led to Harvard say, screw it, we're going to sue you. After Harvard said no, they then put out that, it was a mistake. We didn't mean for the letter to go out. But when Harvard said no to the letter, they did two more things to Harvard. So it was basically like, we didn't mean to threaten Harvard because we didn't mean to send out the letter that we sent out that threatened Harvard. But since Harvard didn't like our letter, we've decided to threaten them two more times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they're just thugs and morons.
Yeah, it's also
this administration.
Well, it's not just Harvard though. I mean, like when I saw that thing about them making a mistake, I'm like, like you accidentally deported Abrego Garcia, but then refused to bring him back. Like that was a mistake.
Oops. You hate that when you hit send and you didn't finish the document or you didn't attach it or you attached the wrong document.
Or their tariffs, the original tariffs thing, which was made up, was like fake math that they'd come up with and like was all wrong. They are like the most menacing clowns.
Yeah. Menacing
That's
clowns.
the end of my...
Well, because we have a president who is a...
narcissistic lunatic, sociopath, psychopath.
I was going to stick with menacing clown, but all those are true. Menacing clown.
Sure.
He is a menacing clown.
So do you think Harvard's going to win this case? Is Harvard
just
going to win on the merits?
Absolutely.
Just like these
just like the law firms. Yeah.
Guys.
I mean, there's so many claims at the Harvard. They have a First Amendment claim, but they also have just basic Administrative Procedure Act claims because first of all, this money was already earmarked, but in order to basically change government policy or to take somebody's money away that the government is giving you, you have to comply with the strictures of what's called the Administrative Procedure Act. And it's designed to keep all these big federal agencies from acting, here's the magic legal words, arbitrarily and capriciously. And that's a standard. It's literally a standard in the Administrative Procedure Act is that you can overturn an action if it's just sort of random and stupid. Mm-hmm. And they're about, the Harvard complaint does an amazing job of just pointing out how random and stupid all the demands were. It doesn't even make sense, including what they made a big deal out of the point I just talked about how they were trying to cut off funding from major Boston hospitals that were not owned or operated by Harvard, but simply, have doctors who teach at the medical school.
Yeah, it's possible that Harvard perhaps has some smart people available, capable of pushing back on this administration and making a robust case. Yeah, and a lot of money. Yeah. So,
and did you know there somebody pointed out that there are about 180 federal district judges who've gone to Harvard.
Yeah.
Kind of not a smart move. Harvard or Harvard Law School or whatever.
Yeah, I bet the Trump administration doesn't have nobody in it either. Okay. All right. That's about it. The only thing I wanted to say sort of as a close, and this is more of a political point than a legal one, which is why I'm going to make it. When it comes to Harvard, when it comes to the law firms, and you're seeing the pushback, and they're going to win. One of the things that struck me this week is there's polling that came out. A lot of polling came out this week. There's a lot of people doing kind of voter sentiment for the first 100 days. Trump is not just underwater on his favorability across all these polls. He is also, his numbers on immigration are specifically starting to fall. And his handling of the economy numbers are also falling. Now, what he's doing on the economy, though, that's a thing people can sort of see and feel and understand. And they're like, you said you were going to lower prices and you're not lowering prices, right? I hear this in the focus groups from voters who said, I need my grocery prices to be lower. And he said he was going to do that, and he's not. But the immigration thing really sticks out to me as an example of, a lot of Gavin Newsom and other Democrats wanted to say, this is a distraction. They didn't want to go right at Donald Trump's strength. But I will tell you, what you are starting to see is an erosion in Trump's top issue. People think of him as the best on immigration and the best on the economy. He is being eroded in both those things because people decided to do what was right. They decided to go on offense. They decided to make their case and not just lay down. And when you do that, you can win.
Yes. And what they did was they shined a light on exactly what's going on. It's not just an abstraction about, oh my gosh, it's terrible, we're overrun with immigrants, and then you point to a couple of cases where maybe an illegal immigrant did something bad. No, you're showing the other side. There's a lot of people who are innocent, and if you just randomly take them and ship them abroad without due process, leaving Abrego Garcia's wife there alone with their kids who have various health problems. I mean, it shows that there's another side to it. And people don't want this lawlessness. They really don't want this lawlessness. And one thing I saw that was interesting, maybe you can shed light on it, is I saw that there were some polls specifically of Hispanic voters who, everybody used to, the Democrats and some others used to always assume that, this was the mistake they made out in California, for example, that if you're Hispanic, any kind of Hispanic, because they don't distinguish, you're pro illegal immigration, which is absolutely not true.
Absolutely
100% not true. Okay, and it was really one of the issues that Donald Trump scored points with, right?
100%.
And now he's tanking among Hispanics because they realize
the numbers were wild.
This is not what we wanted. We didn't want to treat people like shit.
Yeah.
Okay. We want to. We all really want the same thing: rational, lawful, humane immigration enforcement. Not this shit.
I think that's right. And I think that this is where, I think Joe Biden made a mistake in not understanding that people saw the open border as a lawless thing and they wanted it closed.
Yeah.
But they do not want Donald Trump to violate people's due process, to be cruel to people. I think the majority of Americans have a pretty sane approach. They're like, we would like good border security. We got to know who's in the country. But also, we want people to come here. We want there to be immigration and we want to treat immigrants well. Now, is there a...
Because everybody goes, they go to the corner coffee shop and there's somebody there who they like, right?
Yeah.
Who's from another country.
They heard Trump say, I'm going to deport criminals.
Right.
And people say, okay, that sounds good. Now, as long as you do it by the rules. And this is where one of the...
Yeah, and if they really are criminals, what's the problem in showing that?
Well, this is where I do think the public, as they dug into the Abrego Garcia case, you are making headway by explaining to people, yes, maybe nobody, we're not arguing that necessarily he's a good guy or whatever. We are saying he deserved due process. And when J.D. Vance says, well, he got due process.
And they're lying.
Well, they're lying, but also they're like, well, he had a deportation order. I do think because this case has been made aggressively to people, they are understanding the difference between deporting somebody and sending them to an El Salvadorian prison
where they may never
to rot without any kind of representation. Right. And that is different. It is different to deport someone than to send them to an El Salvadorian gulag. That is a different thing.
And he was subject to Abrego Garcia was actually subjected to an order that they could not deport him. He was originally deportable, and then anyway. Just lawless. That's
anyway, my point is that you can win these fights if people choose to fight. And people should stop, cowardice is contagious, but courage is contagious too. And people should choose courage because you can win this fight.
Yeah. And, and sometimes in life, you face difficult choices. And it's hard to, like, you got to weigh politics, and you weigh this, and you weigh, like, well, are people going to get mad at me if I do that? But they're going to get mad at me if I do this. Sometimes it's just simpler just to do the right thing.
Yeah, right.
There's nothing,
And to trust that if you do it, people will get there with you.
Absolutely. And if they don't, at least you have the ability to look yourself in the mirror the next morning and say, well, I did the right thing. I tried.
You tried.
We tried.
All right, guys.
And we're going to keep trying.
Courage is contagious. George, thanks as always for talking about the illegal news with me. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave us a review, and we will see you guys next week.
Hey, YouTube fam. If you want to support the Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave.